Welcome to Chapter 10, Section 2, which is the midsection of the chapter. It's only a 3-section chapter on Islam, and the spread of Islam is the topic today. What we're going to be learning about today is what happens after Muhammad passes away in 632. Muhammad's successors do their best to spread the faith of Islam, and they do a pretty good job at that. The first part talks about what is known as the rightly guided caliphs. In 632, Abu Bakr became the first caliph. Now, the word caliph means successor or deputy, and Muslim rulers after Muhammad's death were called the caliphs. Now, the first 4 caliphs after Muhammad were known as the rightly guided caliphs. They were Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. All 4 of these had known Muhammad, and so therefore, that is why they're known as the rightly guided caliphs, because they were believed to have followed the Sunnah, which was the way of life that Muhammad led. Their rule, or the region that they controlled, was called the Caliphate. One of the ways that they spread the faith was through Jihad. Now, Jihad literally means the striving, and it refers to an inner struggle against evil non-believers. It is also used to refer to an armed struggle, though, against non-believers, and the Jihad became the justification for Islamic expansion. The caliphs extended the empire, and by 750 AD, it stretched around 6,000 miles from the Atlantic Ocean to the Indus Valley. Some of the reasons why the Muslims were successful include that Muslim armies were well prepared for battle, and they fought in disciplined and ordered rank. The Byzantine and Sassanid Persian empires were also weak at this time due to fighting with each other and also outside invaders such as the Avars, the Tatars, and early Mongol groups. People in those empires also liked the idea of Islam, and they wanted to convert due to a lack of religious freedom in their own empires. Capital letter C talks about how they treated conquered peoples. Muslims allowed conquered peoples to follow their own faith. This was actually a fairly formidable and easy style. Now, they treated Christians and Jews who were worshiping the same God, just in a different fashion, with special consideration, because these peoples they called people of the book. They were allowed to pay what's called a poll tax, which exempted them from the mandatory military service. This treatment of conquered peoples, as I said earlier, can, over the course of world history, be classified as generally tolerant. Roman numeral 2, internal conflict creates crisis. There were many assassinations. For example, the Caliph Uthman was assassinated in 656. After that, Ali, who was Muhammad's cousin and also his son-in-law, became the new caliph. The Ummayads is a family that took over Muslim rule after the death of Ali. They moved the capital from the city of Mecca to Damascus, Syria. The reason they moved the capital was to be in a more central location of the empire at that time. I shouldn't say empire, but the caliphate at that time. Now, we're going to talk about the Sunni and the Shia here, and we'll take a look at why they split. There is a nice chart in the book on page 271, but first, I'll go through the definition of these 3 groups, and then we'll take a look at why they split. The Sunni are followers of Muhammad's example. They did not resist the rule of the Ummayyads. In fact, the way that I understand it is the Sunni don't really care who the caliph is, as long as the caliph follows Muhammad's example, which is known as the Sunnah. That's why they're called the Sunni. The Shia, also known as the Shi'ites, they're known as the party of Ali. They believe that all caliphs should be descendants of the family of Muhammad and therefore also be in the bloodline of Ali. Now, the Sufi rejected the luxurious lives of the Ummayyads, and they pursued a life of poverty and religious devotion. There aren't many Sufi in the world today, but this is their standpoint. So I'm going to take a look at this key chart right here, the basic differences between Sunni and Shia Muslims. First of all, it spans off of who is the caliph. That's really the big issue here. The Sunni believe that the first 4 caliphs were rightly guided. The Shia believe that Ali, who was the Prophet's son-in-law, should have been the successor to Muhammad. They also believe that Muslim rulers should follow the Sunnah. This is what the Sunni believe, which is Muhammad's example. The Shi'ites think that all Muslim rulers should be descended from Muhammad. They do not recognize the authority of the Sunnah. The Sunni claim that the Shia have distorted the meaning of various passages in the Quran, and the Shia or Shiites have claimed the same thing about the Sunni. Now, if you look at the pie chart, in the world today, 83% of the world's Islamic population is Sunni practitioners, whereas 16% are Shiites. The other 1% would most likely be those who practice Sufism or other factions. Okay, that takes us to the abbasids. In 750, this is another family that took control of the Muslim empire, and they actually had all of the Ummayads killed off. So which is also falling under this topic of assassination. Roman numeral 3 will talk about how Muslim control expands into Spain. North African Muslims had conquered parts of Spain, but as they pushed north, their progress was stopped at the Battle of Tours in 732. The leader of that on the Christian side was the Frankish ruler named Charles Martel. He earned a nickname known as Charles the Hammer Martel for defeating the Muslim invasion of Spain. Then the Muslim group known as the Berbers settled down in southern Spain and created what's called Al-Andalus. Al-Andalus was the Muslim state located and established in southern Spain. Capital B will talk about the abbasids and how they consolidated power. In 762, the abbasids moved the capital once again from Damascus to Baghdad. A bureaucracy, a form of government where you have different groups in charge of different departments. So basically in the United States, if you wanted to say a bureaucratic form of government would be having the Department of Education, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Agriculture, so on and so forth. That's kind of a system that was established by the abbasids here in the Muslim empire. They weren't the first to do it, okay, but they did utilize it. The bureaucracy was established, and it controlled the flow of money, it controlled the military, and it also dealt with foreign relations or diplomacy. The abbasids also imposed a great deal of taxes on the Muslim people to pay for this bureaucratic form of rule. Capital C is going to talk about how rival groups then further divide Muslim lands. The Abbasid Caliphate ruled from 750 to 1258. So they ruled for quite some time in a fairly successful fashion. Then, though, there was the Fatimid. It was a smaller caliphate formed by Shia Muslims who claimed descent from Muhammad's daughter Fatima. Then we'll take a look at the Muslim trade network. We know they traded by sea over the Mediterranean and also throughout the Indian Ocean. Indian Ocean trade was something that was extremely important at this time and prior to this time, and it continues to be an important trade route today. Over land, these people used the Silk Roads of China. They also traded with the interior of Africa and Europe. Arabic was the single language throughout the Muslim empire, and the form of currency was called the Abbasid dinar. The dinar is still the form of currency in Iraq and some of the Middle East today. Muslims also established banks throughout the empire, some of the first banks, and they also created what's called the sack system, which was really the first form of a check or IOU kind of a paper document agreement. Now, some of the major Muslim cities throughout the empire included Cordoba, Spain, Cairo, Egypt, Damascus, Syria, and Baghdad, Iraq. The final section of chapter 10 will be section 3, and we'll look a little bit more about how Islamic faith and practitioners spread, some invasions of this region, so on and so forth. Thank you.